Incredible and shocking moments can happen all the time around the world. Since security cameras or cell phones are very common these days, they can capture these moments very easily. And with social media, it doesn't take much time for everyone to have access. Many recordings become so unbelievable to the point of leaving anyone in shock. That's exactly what we're going to see here today. An Argentine police officer named Celeste Ayala moved social media by empathizing with a baby who was crying copiously in a children's hospital in Buenos Aires. According to a report by the newspaper Clarín, the police officer, who had recently become a mother and worked in the patrol command of the Berisso region in Buenos Aires, was doing a night shift at the hospital and, upon hearing the incessant crying of the malnourished baby, saw her maternal instincts speak louder. She asked the doctors if she could feed the child with her own breast milk and, upon receiving approval, didn't think twice and, even in uniform, went to breastfeed the baby. The account that was shared on social media went viral and moved everyone. Perhaps if the police officer hadn't been there at that moment, the child could have had a much worse outcome. The repercussion was such that Celeste ended up being promoted. Images released by United States authorities show the final moments of a man who was sucked into an airplane turbine. Kyler Effinger died on New Year's Eve after invading the airport apron in an attempt to board the aircraft about to take off. The recording shows Effinger nervous upon realizing he had missed the flight. He tries to open a door that gives access to the runway and breaks a window with a sneaker. Then, he accesses an emergency exit and manages to invade the restricted area at Salt Lake City International Airport in the state of Utah in the United States. The man runs and waves toward the plane. As he approaches one of the doors on the left side of the aircraft, he ends up sucked into the engine. The video is interrupted seconds before the incident. Effinger planned to travel to Denver to visit his sick grandfather. According to the newspaper New York Post, family members believe he had a mental health crisis, and that's why he took such action. A participant of the show Beachfront Bargain Hunt has much to thank a viewer for. Nicole McGinnis was accompanied by her father on the HGTV show in the United States when Eric Voigt, a doctor who was watching the program comfortably at home after a day's work, noticed something on her neck. Eric, who works at a medical center in New York, didn't let the case go after finishing watching the show, which shows families fulfilling the dream of having a beach house in a way that fits their budget. Determined to find out if Nicole knew about the lump on the left side of her neck, the doctor tracked the woman down on social media. He couldn't because he didn't know her last name, but decided to post on the show's account. The worrying message reached Nicole, who decided to seek doctors. After exams, the diagnosis came and it was cancer. The doctor says he was calmly watching the show as usual when he noticed a small lump on Nicole's neck, so he quickly became intrigued and thought she might have a health problem and might not even know about it. He quickly then found a way to alert the participant, who was super grateful and could thank him in person. On the escalator of a subway station in Nanning, China, a man, besides getting beaten, was arrested after an alleged harassment. In the images from the station's security camera that were released, we can see him going up the escalator behind a woman. At a certain moment, he ends up poking the woman on the buttocks, and irritated by that, she gives a big slap on his face. Moreover, she also ends up holding him and informing the security on site, who approach the man and take him under arrest. Already at the police station, the man tries to defend himself, saying that he didn't do it with bad intention. The justification didn't convince the authorities, and he remained under arrest. Inside Edition aired on its program a video showing a woman doing a kind of social experiment. She was holding a bottle of drink in her hand, pretending to be drunk and lost on the streets of Madrid in Spain, in order to see the reaction of men who passed by her in that situation. Well, the result ended up being quite shocking. After all, most of the men stopped and tried to take advantage of that situation, since the woman, who is very beautiful by the way, would be drunk and, let's say, unconscious. When they didn't stop to try to take advantage of the situation, they completely ignored her and left her alone in that state.
¿Que te emborrachas?
Yo no bebo nunca.
Mira, vamos a las escaleras que están ahí.
¿Una escalera?
Sí.
Es que llevo bebiendo todo el día.
Ah.
One of the men ended up drawing more attention by stopping and trying to kiss the woman several times. Probably in his mind, as she would be drunk, she wouldn't remember the situation, and at that moment, unconscious wouldn't prevent the kiss. Little did he know that everything was being recorded. A video made by the dashboard camera of a vehicle shows the exact moment when it approaches and simply passes through the middle of a large and violent tornado. In the images, we can see that a storm is happening at that moment. But what nobody imagined, not even those inside the car, was that a tornado would pass right there in the place, and of course would leave everyone in panic. A strong wind begins when suddenly several objects and things start flying around the vehicle. The driver doesn't stop and accelerates, intending to get out of there as quickly as possible while being hit by various objects. Fortunately, the wind doesn't have enough strength to lift the car, and nothing that the wind carried ends up hitting and damaging the vehicle for real. Although apparently nothing happened to him, the scare was huge. After all, he was passing through the center of a tornado, and in the images we can see several things like pieces of houses, traffic lights, tiles, among other things, flying like a piece of paper. The internal camera of a vehicle attached to the dashboard was filming all the traffic movement, and everything seemed to be going normally until a school bus that was right in front of it makes a stop for some children to get off. One of these children, however, gets off and without looking to the other side decides to cross the road of two-way traffic and is surprised by a truck that was coming in his direction at full speed. By great luck, the driver managed to brake in time and avoided a great tragedy. What also caught a lot of attention was the brake of the truck of the Volvo brand that proved to be very effective in a risk situation. The brand has always been shown as one of the best in these aspects in several tests with automatic braking, however. In this situation, the test was performed, let's say, in real life, and it worked. The internal security camera of a house recorded the moment when two armed bandits enter the place during the early morning in complete silence to steal belongings of the residents. Upon entering one of the rooms, it is possible to see two women sleeping deeply, while one of the bandits looks for something of value in the place. In the same image, it is possible to see the hand of the other armed bandit right behind, guarding the entrance of the room. The thieves roamed the house in silence for a few minutes and left with cell phones, a weapon that would be the owner's, and credit cards. In an interview, the owner of the house, who would be the grandfather of the young women sleeping in the room, says that they noticed the robbery the next day, and when watching the camera images, they were horrified at the risk they ran. After all, if someone woke up, the bandits would be startled, and the result could be tragic. In an accident where a car was crushed by two trucks in Mato Grosso, Brazil, a distressing video ended up being made by a woman identified as Talita, who was inside the car and managed to survive. In the video, the woman appears frightened, in a state of shock, asking for help to get out of the wreckage. The scene is very distressing, especially seeing the situation in which the car ended up, crumpled like a piece of paper. The husband who was driving also survived by a miracle.
Vem, amor. Fala comigo, por favor, amor. Socorro! Socorro! Amor, fala comigo, por favor.
Traffic had stopped due to roadworks. Right behind Talita's car and her husband's, a red car stopped, but a truck that was coming at full speed ended up not noticing the signaling and crushed the two cars. Unfortunately, those who were in the red car died on the spot, but Talita and her husband managed to be rescued alive and were fine. A woman who allegedly caught her husband leaving a motel with her own sister recorded everything and, revolted by the betrayal, exposed everything on the internet. The case circulated and had a lot of repercussion throughout the country. After all, besides the betrayal, the fact that they were supposedly siblings left many people shocked. It was then that the mistress, in this case the supposed sister, decided to make a video pronouncing herself and explaining the whole situation. According to her, everything was a misunderstanding because the man was only her brother by consideration and not by blood. However, the justification doesn't seem to have eased things, since many netizens said that even not being by blood, he was still a brother, and it was still a betrayal, something completely disrespectful.
Fazer o que tu queria, né? Tua irmã, conseguiu tua irmã sair do motel com ela, né? Eu tô gravando mesmo, Zé, porque tem uma...
Sim, ele é meu irmão e não é irmão de sangue.
Also, in the explanatory video, the young woman says that when she was a child, her mother, without financial conditions to take care of her, ended up giving her to a family of acquaintances who offered to take care of her, and from that, she joined the family. During a trial in a court in South Carolina, United States, in the year 2019, a man ended up not holding back and advanced, punching his son's killer. The murderer on trial, Lindy Jones, 22 years old at the time, confessed and pleaded guilty to the murder of Willie Antoine Fields, 18 years old. When facing the criminal who took his son's life, the father let anger take over.
It's so hard.
Sir, back off, back off, sir, back off, back off, back off, sir, back off.
The father, identified as Willie Clay Fields, even having all the reasons in the world for such attitude, had to face a charge of contempt for disobeying a court rule and of third-degree assault for assaulting the criminal. A recording made from a stadium on the outskirts of Moscow, Russia, where his youth team, FC Znamya Truda, was training on July 4th, showed a luminous lightning bolt emerging from a cloudy sky and hitting directly the young goalkeeper Ivan Zaborovsky, who fell unconscious to the ground. Coach Anton Basov ran towards the goalkeeper and found him lying on the grass, face down. He turned him over and saw that the front of his shirt had been burned and was desperate. After Basov administered first aid, Zaborovsky was taken to the hospital, where he was placed in an induced coma so that the injuries could be treated. When the young goalkeeper was admitted to the hospital after being struck by lightning during a warm-up, few thought he would survive, but less than 3 weeks later, Zaborovsky returned to the fields. The only thing that reminds him that he could have been involved in a fatal incident was a burn on his chest, caused by wearing a chain at the time of the electric discharge. Maria Teresa dos Santos, better known as Teca, faced a serious challenge when, on July 14th, she was brutally attacked by her own dog. The incident occurred while Teca was alone in her residence in Taubaté, Brazil, and bent down to interact with her pet dog. The dog approached, put its head on her shoulder, and then bit her. The injuries suffered by Teca were extremely severe, resulting in a hospitalization that lasted 28 days, of which 15 were spent in a coma. During her hospitalization, she had to undergo several surgeries, including the amputation of her right arm. Teca's teeth also need repairs due to the multiple times she was dragged on the ground during the attack. The case ended up gaining worldwide repercussion after Teca decided to give a testimony of the tense moment she went through on her social networks.
Sofri ataque do meu cachorro. O motivo nós não vamos saber, porque a gente tinha sim uma relação de amor e é cachorro doce. Então, o motivo nós não saberemos.
Teca says she's grateful to be alive and ready to face the next stage of her recovery journey. She needs physiotherapy treatment for her left arm due to injuries and loss of mobility caused by tendon ruptures from the bites. In addition, a new reconstructive surgery on her hand will be necessary to recover movements. She also faces challenges in the facial area due to loss of sensitivity on the left side and edema on the right side. In a luxury Disney resort, small crocodiles began to haunt people who were having fun on site. There are bungalows there, which are small houses on a lake that can be rented for very high amounts. And according to information, guests were feeding and throwing food into the lake, thus attracting crocodiles close to the shore and spoiling them. In a video that circulates on the internet, we can see an employee of the place having to fight to scare away a crocodile that was climbing up the lake shore towards the park's attractions. Besides the inconvenience that the animals were causing to those who frequented the park, a fatality also ended up happening with a young man who frequented the place with his parents in a bungalow. He ended up being dragged into the water by the animal and died tragically. Subscribe to the channel for more videos like this.